And hello again, everyone, and welcome to Eckstein Hall, Marquette University Law School. I'm Mike Goucher, and this is On the Issues. This is our continuing series of conversations with news and policymakers, people who are doing interesting and important work in this region and beyond. And today we are joined by the president of the Milwaukee Area Technical College, Dr. Vicki Martin. Won't you please give her a warm welcome to Marquette Law School. Thank you. You know, there's been a lot of talk in recent months about free college tuition and making college education more affordable for students. It's been a hot button issue. A lot of talk about it in the presidential campaign. Of course, as you know, President Obama has talked about the possibility of free community college. And the reason, at least partly, for the appearance by Dr. Martin here today is to talk about something that's become known as the MATC Promise. Some people talk about free tuition and fees, and then there are folks who are actually going to do it. And in September, the Milwaukee Area Technical College will begin a program that will allow a number of eligible students to attend college, free tuition and fees. And Dr. Martin, let's begin with the idea for this. We'll talk about how this is going to work, who's eligible, and all of that in just a moment. But where did this idea come from? Was it from the president or was it from somewhere else?
Well, for MATC, it really started when, of course, President Obama announced America's Promise. And we were contacted by the Business Journal, who asked us what we thought about it. And I said I thought it was a great idea. I just wasn't sure how we would go about paying for it. But it really captured my imagination, and I just really thought it would be great for our students who desperately need to go to college and can't afford the tuition and fees to be able to go for free and to have a chance at a better life. And so we had one of our outstanding alums being honored at a national conference at our AACC, which is the American Association of Community Colleges. And I have to tell you, Kimberly Motley is a graduate of Marquette University as well, law school.
Mm-hmm.
And she's also a graduate of ours. So she won the award for outstanding two-year graduate, and she graduated from our paralegal program. So we were there to honor her, and there were a number of workshops, and we were having a breakfast to honor her, but I decided to attend one of the workshops on the MATC Promise. And I actually ended up in that room, and some people know this by accident. I was supposed to go into a different room, but I ended up talking to some people.
That's called fate.
Yeah, serendipity, fate, whatever you want to call it. I ended up walking in and saying, oh, but you know, let's hear what Tennessee is doing. And so as they started talking about the promise, I started thinking about, wow, I wish that our governor would put aside some dollars from the lottery. And I thought, well, that's just not going to happen. But is there a way that we could possibly do that? And as they started talking about how they were going to pay for it, I started to think about, this is really very doable. I think that we could raise private dollars. And then they mentioned that there was a college, Harper College in Illinois, who was doing it on their own. And I said, I think that we can do this. And by the end of that session, I was like, we've got to figure out a way to do this. This really has to happen. And I just need to share with you, as I went back and talked to Kimberly Motley and had breakfast right before she got her award, I talked to her about the MATC Promise, and she said, well, let me tell you. She said, my daughter, who just is graduating as a high school senior, I asked her to travel with me internationally to help families.
She does a lot of work in Afghanistan, Kimberly Motley.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that morning, as we were talking, and she says, just a minute, and she takes the phone call, and here it's a mother from Australia, and she had found her children who had been abducted, and she found them in another country. And then she turns to me, she says, I need to tell you, my daughter is going to attend the MATC Promise instead of traveling with me internationally, because she thinks it's such a wonderful opportunity. And I just thought, you know what, we just have to do it. It's just something that's really important for us to do. So I came back and we did a lot of research. We really looked at the MATC Promise. We looked at what Oregon was thinking about doing. We looked at a lot of individual colleges, Kalamazoo and others. We talked to the president at Harper College, and we just said I really liked what I was seeing in Tennessee because it was immediate. It was something that you could do right away, that you could really start talking to seniors and telling them, if you work hard, you can go to college and you can make a difference.
Let's talk about the promise and what it is and what it isn't, for that matter.
Right.
What is the MATC Promise? What is the promise you're making?
Well, the promise we're making is that if you work hard, and so by working hard, what we mean is in your senior year, and we didn't want to go back to the junior and the sophomore year, as many Promise programs do. They start at the freshman year and they go many years. We said we really want to start with the seniors for a number of reasons. we were seeing that our own student enrollment was declining because the recession, where we had most of our students, we were recovering in our economy and they were going back to school. And so they were going back to work, excuse me. So they were going back to work. And so what we were seeing is students were attending part-time when our economy and our employers needed them the most. And so what we said is, okay, so if we can capture them right away, the senior year, and that was a lot of our thinking as to why we didn't want to wait a number of years. We wanted to do it immediately. We said, employers need us now, our enrollments are declining, we got to do something. And so we said, okay, if they work hard and they get a 2.0 grade point average that senior year, if they apply to our Promise by December 1st, if they are in attendance 90% of the time, if they graduate on time, 4 years, and if they have an estimated family contribution of $3,000 or less, that they would be eligible. They have to get an ACT score of 16 as well.
Okay.
And so if they met all of those criteria, then they would be considered as part of the Promise cohort.
And the typical amount of money that we're talking about for each of these students, if they took advantage of this program, how much would that mean for these students?
Right. Well, we figured that average, because of course what we were doing and looking at an EFC, estimated family contribution of $3,000 or less, that means a family of 4 is earning about $48,000. So we really thought that we really needed to look at what did that mean even for our students, and that was the same as our estimated family contribution for our current student population. And so that came down to about $1,500 per student for the 2 full years of full-time studies. So if they took the full load, 30 credits per year for 2 years, it would equal, so $700 a year. And we thought that was a great investment to go and try to raise money for.
This is a different student than you typically have at MATC. High school kids are not the majority of your population who go directly to MATC,
No.
correct?
No, and that's typical of 2-year colleges across the country. We were getting about 11% direct from high school, but it just really, what we'd find out is students would wait a year or two, they go to work or they go do something else and they come back, and by then they either had a family, they're working, or they're whatever, they couldn't attend full time. And we really thought that this was really an opportunity to bring in more young students direct from high school who could go full time and then graduate. And we know that full-time students tend to be more successful. And so it's going to change the whole nature of our college, because we are used to students, the average age being 30. So it's going to be a very different environment for us, and we know that, and we're getting ready and prepared for that.
So what has been the reaction? Once the news of this broke, you proposed this in September of last year. How many students from area high schools who are eligible have taken the first step in applying for this program?
Right. So December 1st, we had 2,969 students. Our goal was 1,000 students. And let's put that in perspective.
So almost 3 times that.
Right.
Yeah.
So in perspective, the year before, on December 1st, we had 166 direct from high school applications. So this really has, in fact, captured the imagination of the students that are in our high schools and their families.
And so we were talking earlier before we came downstairs, and you were telling me we are at an especially important moment in this program's young history. The students would go to school in the fall, but to do that, they're going to have to do a few other things. And one of those is they've got to fill out financial form applications.
Right. And
how do they do that, and how are you going to make sure that families who may have never had any experience with a college education know all that has to be done?
Right. So we've set up a number of different workshops that are available to students on our campus. We have reached out to the high schools, to the counselors, to the superintendents, to talk to them about how important this date is. We have also put out what we call workshops that help families of low income complete the, fill out their income tax forms. The income tax forms, for those of you who've ever completed a FAFSA, you know that you've got to have that as a piece of it. And so we know that these are first generation students. Their families may not be familiar with how to complete that. And we know that low income students, this is another reason they don't end up going to college, because they don't complete these forms in time. And many of the students then fill them out, if they do, much later, almost the time when school starts, so they don't get their full Pell benefits, that the grants that they have coming to them, nor the state grants. This is a last dollar program, so we really have to have them take advantage of their Pell grants that are available to them, as well as any state grants that are available to them. And then we pay the last dollar, the difference between those.
Are you concerned?
Yes.
I mean, you've got about 3,000 kids who
Yes.
clearly want to be a part of this, but are you concerned that you could lose some of those kids through this process?
Yes, and this is typically where many folks across the country, this is where they have lost the students, is completing this form, and we know that, and many cities and states, Tennessee in particular, they've galvanized resources around trying to get folks to come out and to get the help that they need to complete these forms. Tennessee, for example, and that's what we've looked at through a statewide effort, and that means everybody on board, including the mayors and the governor and everyone else, talking about how important it was to complete this. They reached the 85% of those who have applied. If we reach that, I'd be really, really very happy. But that is the critical next piece. By March 15th, that form must be completed, and we are nowhere close to having that done. So we're calling upon the mayor, we're calling upon, and we're hoping that Tammy Baldwin will help us as well, but others who can help us to make sure that that happens. I've reached out, and I see her there, Dr. Driver, to help us to figure out ways to get students to complete that form.
Let's talk about the students once they're in the program, because there are certain expectations of the students who will be a part of the MATC
Right.
Promise, are there not?
Yes, so once they're in, and they're part of the cohort, then what's expected is that they attend full-time, and that means 12 credits at least, up to 15 credits, and that they have to then make sure that they, if they need tutoring, that they avail themselves of tutoring. They must go through an orientation. They must do 8 hours of community service, and we thought that was important because we wanted them to give back to the community and to be understanding what is happening in their own community, and so that was part of what their promise is back to us, is they're going to work hard. They're going to do all the things that they need to do to make sure they're successful, and we'll help them, but we'll also make sure that they participate in mentoring, and we're trying to find internships for them right now as well, because we do believe that if they're also working, that they'll understand the world of work, but they'll also be more connected to the institution and to their own success.
So you mentioned it earlier, this is not being funded, the Promise is not being funded by the government. And we'll talk about how it is being funded in a moment. The decision to go that route, was that an acknowledgement that you just thought politically this is going to maybe take a while or may not happen at all, that let's try and do this in another way because, frankly, we might not be able to do this politically?
Right. And I really, really believe that this community would step up. I really thought if we told them about how important this program was to this community and what a difference it was going to make to the young people and to offer them hope for a better life and a great career through the programs that we offer, and we offer so many different programs that are available to them, that people would understand that and say, we want to support that. We want to make sure that young people who never thought they could go to college have the opportunity to do so. And I have to tell you, when we announced on the first day in September, on the 9th, when it was announced, I did get a phone call from Chris Abley, and he was the first one to write a check to us for $250,000.
So you're looking to raise how much money, and where are you in that?
Well, we said $1 million because that's the I can sleep at night number. We figure, what's the worst case scenario? What if we really had to pay for every single student, you know?
What if you have 2,500 instead of 1,000?
Exactly,
Yeah.
and what if we had to pay the full amount? And so we thought it was around $1 million for the first cohort. That would be the worst case scenario. As it turns out, we don't think that that's what the number is going to be. So we're right now at about $626,000, and we've had a lot of people help us with that. And Kimberly Motley has served as one of our co-chairs. We have a number of other co-chairs that have helped us to reach that number. But I have to tell you, the first few months, it was really just receiving the money and the checks, and which was really, really heartening. And now we're doing the harder work to get to that $1 million of really reaching out to business and industry who will benefit most from this.
I was going to ask you,
Yeah.
who is donating the money? You mentioned the county executive donating money, but are these small donors? Are they larger donors? Are they companies and businesses?
Right, so we have out to a number of foundations. We do have a request out, and we've had some, it's mostly been individual donors who have stepped up. We've had an alum step up and give us some dollars. We've had a couple of folks from Quarles and Brady in particular who have really stepped up and helped us with the campaign and reaching out to their colleagues in the legal community. And we're going to be meeting with the CEOs of manufacturing. We've had a couple of meetings with them already. Now we're going to be reaching out to them, as well as some industrial parks. To the healthcare community. So we just have set up a meeting to talk to the CEOs of healthcare as another sector. We're looking at IT and meeting with the CEOs of that as well. We've reached out to our vendors, we've reached out to our advisory committee members, and so it's a continuous process.
One of the things that you said earlier was an inspiration for this was the fact that you're listening to area employers.
Yes.
And what were those area employers saying to you? What did they want from you, from MATC?
Well, they were asking, well, how many students do you have in these different programs where we desperately need employees? And how soon will they graduate? And when you have a part-time student, and when 80% of our students are now part-time, it's very difficult to tell them when, because part-time students tend to come in and out of college very easily because either their jobs get more difficult, or they have more hours added on, or they have family issues, or it's just even the cost of getting tuition dollars, with all the other costs that they may have. And so when we looked at it, we said, we can't even tell you when we're really going to have a graduating class because we're not sure. We're not sure of the numbers coming out. And if you can imagine that if 50 to 60% of the jobs now and in the future are going to be middle skill jobs, which is what we train for.
Define a middle skill job for people in this room.
Middle skill jobs are those that require more than a high school diploma but less than a 4-year degree.
Such as?
Like welding, police science, culinary arts. We have some IT support folks. A lot of them want the 4-year, but they will take the 2-year. We have business management, welding. I mean, we're just a lot of different areas. CNC machining. And we have all of those programs and more, over 200 program areas. And and we couldn't answer that question, and they were concerned.
They want certainty. When are you going to graduate?
I mean, can you tell us at least when we can count on that? Because we don't know we don't know how we're going to. So construction, for example, we know about all the building that's going on. I mean, that is really for us a real key. We're working with the Bucks as well as the city and the county and our Milwaukee Area Workforce Investment Board to look at where's that pipeline? Where are all these folks going to come that are going to do all the construction around the Milwaukee area, just the downtown alone, not to mention our surrounding communities and what's needed. And so we looked at what we're offering in our high schools, and we looked at what we're offering in terms of the apprenticeship. Worked with the apprenticeship groups. We looked at who was in our current programs. I mean, we're gearing up, but we need to make sure that we've got students who are trained and ready to go. And that's probably one of the key areas right now for us as well, as they're wondering what's happening. Healthcare, as you know, nursing, there's going to be a shortage. But they told us yesterday there's going to be even greater shortage in some of the other areas that we train for. So it's those jobs that require skilled trades, as you know from the manpower report. That's a key area, but IT is another area in healthcare as well.
So you've said that, I mean, this works on a lot of levels for you. It helps with enrollment for the college.
Right.
It helps employers, and it helps a part of our community that needs jobs and needs employment. So you think it's a win-win-win situation. How do you sustain this? Because you're raising money for the first 3 groups of students. How do you sustain it after that?
Right, so we're going to start an endowment campaign because we do want this. I want this to at least, minimum, go on for a decade, because I do think that's how long real change takes, because you have to build up the expectations among young people that college is for you, and you are going to be going to college, and you have the opportunity to do so. That the cost of education is not a barrier for you anymore. And so I think that's what it's going to take, and we're working on a number of different initiatives with one is called M Cubed. It's with UWM and MPS, where the three of us, as the three large urban institutions, are looking at that pipeline. And part of one of our goals is to really set those expectations long term. We know it's not going to be just this year. We're going to need a lot of years to do that. We also know we need to get into the career planning a lot earlier. And now that it'll be done in the middle school, we want to help with that as well. I know it's going to be happening in elementary as well, but middle school is where we really want to start really capturing a lot of those students, showing them what is necessary in terms of the rigor, so that they're college and career ready when they come out. So they have choices. They have a lot more choices and opportunities in their life.
From your perspective, are we doing a good enough job of communicating to our kids the various possibilities that exist out there? I mean, one of the things you hear a lot of is that we sort of tell kids that you got to get your 4-year college education.
Right.
And this is a different message. Are we communicating that to kids who are 11 and 12 and 13 years old?
I think that's really the work that's ahead of us. I really do. I think that a lot of the programs that we offer, many young people have never even heard of before. If we even talk about CNC programming, or I heard 2 students in the hallway, and one said, what program are you in? He said, tool and die. He goes, what? What program is that? And so just explaining what the jobs are that are out there and what's really required from them in terms of what the work environment looks like, how would they use their skill sets, I mean, do they have a passion for it, an interest in it? Many students don't even realize what's available to them, because you're right, their exposure to the world of work may be very limited to just the few people that they know. And so they don't know all the different programs, areas that are available. So I think this career planning, along with what we hope to do with the career planning piece, is show them, do more hands-on to actually try some of these things. And we've had workshops with the Girl Scouts, and we have a heavy metal tour where young people come through and they can actually do some little,
that name,
yeah, heavy metal tour.
Yeah.
Everybody does, yeah. So they actually get to experience what those fields are all about, and they get to talk to other students and to professionals who are in that field.
Let's maybe put a face on what we're talking about, or some of what we're talking about. You mentioned the partnership with MPS and with UWM. You're doing work at Milwaukee Tech.
Right.
What are you doing there? That may help people understand, because I know it actually does relate very much to what we've been talking about.
Right, right. So at Bradley Tech, it's been a great part.
I just showed my age. I called it Milwaukee Tech. It is Bradley Tech.
That's all right.
It's actually Boys Tech when I was around. So.
Right. My brother-in-law graduated as Boys Tech. Yeah. So yeah, if you've been here long enough, you know all the names in the past. But as part of the commission, I'm chair of the commission. We are partners with MPS and UWM, and that's part of our M Cubed initiative, is to really focus our energy specifically on Bradley Tech. And what we are doing is we're changing the curriculum. We're bringing it back to what it originally had in terms of curriculum. So when we talk about construction trades, that's what's going in there as one of the academies that we're putting in there, or what we call career pathways. We're also putting manufacturing back in there, so that will be there as well. We also have an IT track, so that the students can do, right now they're taking some college credit. So what we've done is we've taken our curriculum, and we just approved this through the commission, and what we've done is we've approved that students will earn at least 12 college credits by the time they graduate. So that will be part of our curriculum. They can also be on a Panther track, which is they could take college credit as well and get into one of the STEM fields, and then they can transfer. And we have a transfer agreement also, a guaranteed transfer with UW-Milwaukee. So there's just a lot happening there. We're looking at remediation there. We're looking at culture change there. So we're doing quite a bit. We have United Way helping us there. We've got the GMC helping us. We have the apprenticeship groups there. So it's really a very nice commission that is really dedicated and devoted to making sure that that group is very successful. We have a parent representative from the school there, and I just can't say enough for the team that's really come together and just recommitted themselves to making Bradley Tech the great school it once was.
Is that something that would just be done at a Bradley Tech, or is that something that could be done in other schools around the city as we try to communicate to kids, these are possibilities.
And in fact, it's interesting you should say that, because what I keep hearing from our folks who are working on this is, and once we get this model in place, this is the model then that we could put into all of the other high schools. We do have dual enrollment programs and other high schools, and we are looking at ways that we can embed early college, so that, I mean, how great is that then for the Promise when you combine it with dual enrollment? They can earn college credit for free in high school, and then when they come out, they can make up the rest of that at our institution. So it's really a win-win.
Let's talk a big picture here. What do you see the role of MATC being as we move forward as a community? I mean, we've talked, I guess, in some respects about what that role is, but I'm wondering if you can give us the vision. What is it for the next decade or so in this community?
Well, you know, I think that we've been around for over 100 years. And I just need to just say briefly that the reason we were formed was because in about the early 1900s, actually probably the late 1800s, Charles McCarthy, who also graduated from law school in the University of Georgia, came up with the Wisconsin idea. And at the same time, when he was talking to the chancellor of UW-Madison, because that's where he got his PhD in 1901, he also came up with the idea of vocational technical education for those, what he called the forgotten children. And the forgotten children were those who went to work at the farms and had to leave school or went to work in the factories. And he was able to get legislation passed that really allowed students to take a half a day per week and be paid to learn what they are missing from school. So they learn some vocational trade. And so from that, we have blossomed into the technical college system, which is, we have 16 campuses around the state, and the state is actually divided up. And of course, we are the largest is Milwaukee Area Technical College. But
Give people a sense of how many students are enrolled, whether it's part-time or full-time right now.
Well, at the whole system, it's about 370,000 students. At our institution, over 4 campuses and 2 sites and 30 community-based organizations, we have over 40,000 students per year. So we're a big institution. And I often say that, you know, we're the infrastructure sort of the city, that people don't really understand that as you go through your day, you're probably running into someone who's either attended MATC or has graduated from MATC. And so it's fascinating as you go into healthcare or you go into any place of work, you're going to find, as I become president and I've talked to people, I can't tell you, almost every person I meet, they know somebody in their family or they've attended MATC and have gotten the skill sets. I think what we're really about is making sure that we have an educated workforce, that we make sure that we are finding what kinds of training is really needed for our communities. So for example, we worked with the M7 and we were told that food manufacturing...
It's a regional economic development group, which many people in this room probably know, but you know, for those who don't.
Thank you. That working with them, they had told us, well, this food manufacturing group, they really need to make sure that they have their current employees trained to the next level. And what we also need to make sure of is that we have a pipeline of new employees. And I have to tell you that we were able to very quickly pull together the curriculum by doing what we call a DACOM, which is developing a curriculum by talking to all those employers and saying, is this what you need? Is this? And we were able then to get it through our technical college system to put it in terms of certificates, diplomas, and associate degrees that also would transfer. So we put that whole curriculum together. We hired a faculty member. We made sure that they went out to all those different businesses and said, we are ready. We are ready to go here. And doing that very quickly, that's what we're really supposed to be about. So we find out what the employers need, and because we're so big and we're comprehensive, we also have the transfer programs. We also talk to our transfer partners and we say, you know, what is it you're looking for from our students? Well, you know, what's kind of coursework, what's the rigor level they should be at, and we make sure that we're all working together. We have over 100 advisory committees for each of our programs, over 1,000 who serve on those advisory committees who are from business and industry from that field. They help us in terms of the curriculum. They tell us what we need to do. They tell us what equipment we need to make sure that our students are really adding value when they go out. And what the CEOs of manufacturing says, and now you need to add all those soft skills. We need to make sure that students have the soft skills. And so we shared that with our educational partners as well. We shared that with our MPS partners. They made sure it's in their curriculum, and then we made sure it was at Bradley Tech as well, so that we really are listening to what is really needed in our community and by our employers, and that we provide that education that really helps our community to prosper and to make sure that we are a healthy and vibrant community.
You mentioned soft skills.
Yes.
That's an interesting part of the discussion, and I know you spoke to faculty and to folks who work at MATC the other day, and I think it's safe to say that many of us sitting in this room look at life through our own middle-class experience, and that's something that's fine, but you have to look at other things as you continue to train the workforce of tomorrow. Is that correct?
Right,
Yeah.
right. I think we make a lot of assumptions about the exposure that people have had to the world of work, and just even the idea of coming to class on time. And how do they communicate in the classroom even? I think we have great opportunities to role model and to also say that, yes, the content of what you're learning is very important, but so is how do you work in teams with your other students? How are you involved? Are you problem solving in the classroom? Are you learning the skill sets that you really need for the communication and for problem solving, creativity, innovation, all of those things along with written communication, oral communication? Are those the kinds of things that we're really promoting? And that's what we're working on. And we want to make sure that we're actually checking that off, and that we're very mindful, and that it's something we're role modeling and making sure that in classes we're capturing that right away. Coming to class on time. Employers say to us, do your students come to class? Do they show up on time? We're like, yes, they do. So we have to teach them that that's the same sorts of things that are expected once they get out into the world of work. That how they present themselves, how they dress, how they look, how they talk, how they communicate.
What other challenges does your institution face at this moment in its history?
Well, I think it's always a matter of funding. I think every institution talks about, the way we're funded, how we're funded. We work very hard to make sure that we are very efficient and effective in what we do. But each year we face budget challenges, as do other institutions. I mean, it's something that we're always looking at is how do we maintain the quality of what we do? How do we really change the focus and reallocate our resources where they need to be and make sure that college, for us, it used to be affordability. We were always the low-cost provider, if you want to put it that way, for education. But now, we really have, I think, taken it to a whole new level and said, you need to come here. But when you look at other issues, our students are hungry. They're homeless. They are one incident away from not finishing school or being able to get to their job. And I don't think people realize how day-to-day most of our students live. And we have an emergency fund for a lot of students, and we actually got additional funding from Great Lakes because they saw that the data showed that those students who got the funds were retained at a much higher level than those who didn't get the funds. And it's things like, I got to pay for rent this week. I have no food. I can't pay my doctor bill. My car broke down, or this just happened. My backpack got stolen. And I don't have any books. And if any of you know the cost of books lately, that's almost the cost of tuition many times, especially in the healthcare field and others. So they're struggling every day. And I always say, I go out into the hallway when I'm having bad days and I look around at our students and I know what they're struggling with every day. And I just really marvel. It's really an inspiration to me to see how they come. And they just, in spite of everything else, they somehow understand how important education is to their future.
It's important, too, as this community's demographics change, too.
Right.
You point out on your website you're a majority minority institution.
Right.
It's very different than many college experiences in this state.
It is. And it's interesting because students of color feel very comfortable coming to our campus because we try to also hire folks of color so that they do see the role model. We also then realized we have to have additional programming, and so we started a Men of Color because we saw the greatest equity gap there in terms of graduation and retention. And so we put some strategies together, and we found they were very successful. We were able to retain that cohort, and so now it's an issue of scaling up. How do we do that? And the Promise is helping us with that, and that the same things that worked for that cohort are the same things we're going to be doing for all of our students. But who gets attracted? The low-income students who come to our institution. We're going to make sure that we have the wraparound services to support them and take care of them. We realize that it'll be an additional challenge for us, but it's one that we really believe we have to step up, because it's not just about going to class every day and learning. It's all the other things that they're facing, all the other issues and challenges, and we know we have to be there to help them to get through it and to figure out a way to do it, because they're going to have to figure that out for work anyway.
I'm going to wrap up here with a couple of questions, and then we'll take audience questions. But one question in terms of the challenges you face. We live in a rapidly changing world where technologies change almost overnight. How difficult is it for you to keep pace with the change that we see in our modern world in terms of programs and
Right.
and livelihoods that you're suggesting students pursue?
Right, and that's why the advisory committees are so important to us, because they do help us to pinpoint what is it that the software our students need to have or the equipment that they need to have. So we do take a portion of our budget, and we are very careful on how we prioritize. And we look at where the high demand areas are, and we look at where the technology is really needed, and we do prioritize. But it is a struggle. We always have more requests than we have available equipment. And so we do ask our employers to help us, and our advisory committees to help us, to lend us some of their equipment if they have some used equipment, to donate it to us. But it's a constant battle, because, as you know, as you just said, it's constantly changing. And so if you can only imagine the cost of a lot of these pieces of equipment, they're just very expensive, and just the upkeep is very difficult. But it's our purpose. It's why we exist. And so we have to make sure that we're up to date.
I have to ask one question, because we're recording this for a broadcast on Milwaukee Public Television. MATC has the charter for Milwaukee Public Television.
Yes.
Is that going to continue? Is that a relationship that still makes sense?
For me, I absolutely think it makes sense, and I'm just going to give you a couple examples. As soon as we talked about the Promise, we did have a number of faculty and students. We have a program, of course, in TV and television production, and they came to us and they said, we would like to film some of the Promise students and tell their story over time. We just had Washington Week film after the debates. And right away they said, how about if we had a number of our students come and they can be in the audience, and Gwen Eifel can ask them some questions and they can ask her questions and really see how that production happens. I think that with the arena, we're going to put cameras up on our roof and show the arena, what's happening in terms of show it over time of, well, here's where it started, and then, once they take it down and as they rebuild it back up into the new stadium or the new arena. And then we'll talk about our programs and, how our students are probably going to be training for the jobs that are over there, and how they're part of it. So I think it's a great partnership. I think that we're all about serving our community. And I think that's what Milwaukee Public TV does. It's about serving the community. And as we hired a new general manager, that was the conversation we had of how can we be part of this community and show what's really going on, and see it as a community resource that MPTV can tell the story about Milwaukee as well as doing all the national programming that they do, but really be heavily invested in this community. That's what we're all about. That's our purpose. That's our mission. And if we can show what we're doing as well and how we're impacting the community, I think it's a win-win.
We began by talking about the MATC Promise. I'll wrap up by returning to that subject. There are a number of community colleges in the state that seem to be following your lead on this.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering how much pressure you feel to get it right, to be successful. And I think you and I talked about this right after you announced this program on my TV show. And I said, is there risk inherent with this sort of undertaking? Is there?
Yes, of course. I think anything worthwhile, there's risk. I really believe that. And yes, we want to get it right, but we want to get it right for our students and for this community. The pressure is from us, and that we really believe that this will make a difference in our community, or otherwise we would not have done it. And that's the pressure to get it right, is to do right by our students and by our employers and by our four-year partners. That's more what it's about. And yes, we've had other technical colleges, our sister institutions have followed suit. Others are waiting to see how this all goes. And I hope that it goes well, but for our sakes.
All right. We'll take some questions from the audience. Those of you who have been with us in the past know how this works. If you're in the seating bowl, press down on the rim, not on the, what's that? What's that? Oh, only that? Okay. We're only going to use a stick mic today. See? Shows you what I know. So forget what I just said about the routine of pressing down on something. Wait until one of the folks with a microphone comes to you, and we'll take your question. And again, we'll take as many as we can, and keep them fairly short if you would, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Could you shed some light on what seems to be a dramatic change over the last one or two generations in the cost or budgetary management of higher education? I was just having breakfast this morning, and I'd related to my friend that Paul Ryan, Congressman Ryan, was here a number of weeks ago, and his first question was from a Marquette law student who was graduating. He seemed a little bit older, maybe in his 32 or 33, and he related that he had accumulated student loan debt of over $200,000. Now, I went through Marquette Law School, and mine was a fraction of that. Now, my friend's reasoning was that the problem lies in administration or the Board of Regents, whoever manages higher education costs, that they are mismanaging, in effect. Is that an issue here, or is there some other cause for this dramatic change? Thank you.
Well, I know that's what's been portrayed. I think that you have to come back to the funding formula, and I can only talk about the tech college system. I'm probably more familiar with that. But when you look at all our purpose statements, and we have like 9 purpose statements, and one of them that I didn't talk about is adult basic ed. We are to provide adult basic ed to those folks in the community who need additional skill sets in English or writing or math, as well as GED and adult high school. Those are mostly all free. And a lot of people don't know that. And so when you talk about the cost of the technical college system, we have been, and this is what the president's been talking about, we have been underfunded for so long, and we're very efficient and effective for the little funding that we actually get. I mean, we just get a very small portion of funding overall. I do think that when you look at tuition and fees, when you get less state funding and less federal funding, and most places don't get federal funding, they get the state funding. And we were at one time more on property taxes, and the governor changed that to more state funding, so we're truly a 3-legged stool of tuition and fees and state funding and property taxes. If you really look at what you pay, it's very little, very little. And with the state funding, we lost over $30 million. So every year, we're losing millions and millions of dollars, and now we have outcomes-based funding. Milwaukee in particular, because we're so large, we actually lose millions, thousands, I wish it was thousands, millions of dollars because of that. Even though on those, we're mostly #1 on a number of those measures. So even though we're doing the best, the way the funding formula is, we're bringing in less. So you can just see where raising these private dollars is so important to what we're doing. And so I can't speak for the universities or the privates. I can only speak for the 2-year. And I think that given the funds that we have, that we're managing them pretty well.
Yes.
It's very, very exciting, and thank you so much for the initiative. My question is, how will this opportunity be made available to incarcerated adults who have their GEDs and HSEDs upon release either from jail or prison? Is it available to them since they're not seniors?
Thank you so much for asking that question. We have, because we have gotten, there was, through the governor's office, there was a Blueprint for Prosperity grant, and we were able to avail ourselves of some of those dollars, and we were able to train 4 cohorts of students in a correctional facility who were on their way to being released, so that when they were released, they would have some skill sets in our CNC program. I just went to the graduation. We had 14 women who were incarcerated going to CNC programming, and all 14 graduated, and they all said, and I was there, they said it absolutely changed their lives. We already work at the Franklin Correctional Institute. We do adult basic ed there, and we're going to be offering GED as well, instruction. But this is something that I need to tell you that the tech college presidents around the state, we've taken this on as a special initiative, that we really want to have more grants and more funding so that we can in fact offer training to folks who are incarcerated so that when they come out they can have a chance at a better life.
Let me take a question in back. Yes.
Hi, Dr. Martin. Thank you so much for this amazing initiative. I have a question about how you're going to ensure that the graduates stay in Milwaukee, or at least in the state, and are filling the gaps that we have for employment needs. So what are the plans to retain them here?
That's a great question. The research shows across the country and in Milwaukee as well that most low-income students tend to go to college within 50 miles of where they live. Our students historically have come from our community. That's why we exist, to serve the folks in our community. So they come from our community and they stay in our community. So 92% stay here. So we don't have the same issue. And I know there's a few international companies that would love to have a lot of our students move around the world, but I have to tell you, as I said earlier, most of them tend to be older. They are already established here and they love living here. So they don't want to move. So I think that that's a piece of it. I think that they are connected to this community. And I think through the service learning, they're going to even find out more about their community and how great it is. And I think that that will have them stay, be retained, and be ready for employment and or transfer.
Let me take a question from the back of the room. Yes.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Michelle Havis. I'm a circuit court judge here in Milwaukee County and a proud alum. I graduated from the legal secretarial program in 1989, so thank you. It was a stepping stone for me to take my career to places I never imagined it could go. But what I would like to ask is, how can all the professionals and people who have come through your programs get the word out? What can we do to help you move this forward? But this initiative is very exciting, and MATC is one of the wonderful things we have in our community. How can we help to help you to make this work and make MATC the most it can be?
Well, thank you for that question. We do have the executive director of our foundation here, Christine McGee, and she's been reaching out to our alums. And so I think that that is really critical and really key, is finding where our alums are. And thank you for identifying yourself, because we'll be contacting you.
You'll be getting a call.
And we're going to find out who else in here is an alum. But we definitely need our alums to step up for us. It's very difficult to find them because they change their names or they move and we can't locate them years later. But we do have an initiative where we're reaching out, so thank you so much. We will do that, absolutely.
Other questions? Yes.
Hello, my name is Camille Johnson. I live in Glendale, which is just north of the city, but in Milwaukee. And I'm wondering about the funds that Chris Sabley donated. Were those private funds?
Yes.
And was it a one-time shot then, or did he?
Yeah, he's stepped up and he's trying to help us to find some more folks who would support this as well.
Okay.
Yeah, he's definitely committed to this.
Other questions? Right, yes.
Yeah.
You mentioned that technology advances and changes, but you also mentioned Bradley Tech. And as a person who wanted to take carpentry in high school but was told I couldn't, I was a girl, I'm wondering what you are doing to help the high school. Bradley Boys Tech, Girls Tech is a marvelous school. And I used to battle with students and say, if you learn to be a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter, you will always have a job, and if you can trade your skill with someone else and then grow. But it has become a rather dumping school now because any student can go, and they think, oh, it's easier to be pounding a nail instead of studying a book. It's a very complicated, difficult task, but it's a wonderful future. What are you doing, or what can you do to help MPS put some limits and elevate boys, girls tech to the status it should be to really feed into your program?
Right. Well, I have to tell you, thank you for that question. They've been a really strong partner with us on this, and Dr. Driver sits with me on the commission. And so, and she's got her staff there as well. The principal also joins us. And we have these conversations about who we're attracting, how we're going out and reaching out to the middle schools. We have targeted middle schools that we're looking at. But more broadly than that, because they have students who take this career cruising tool that shows what fields they're interested in, we've been able to divert the students who thought maybe Bradley Tech was just a fun place to go versus a serious place to study and to learn and get a good career. And so we've reached out, and it's already changing. We already have students who are choosing Bradley Tech as their first choice for the right reasons. And so as we start working more and more with students and we start showing them what the curriculum is and the rigor of that curriculum, I really believe by the time we get to the senior class, it will have changed, the culture will have changed, because that's what we're working on right now.
Yes.
Dr. Martin, thank you.
Yes.
I've just been remembering the classes I took both at South Campus and at Downtown Campus. My question is, will the Promise students be concentrated at one campus, or will they be spread out throughout the system?
Right. Students also picked the campus, but we have programs that are only maybe offered on a certain campus. It turns out that most of the students chose the Milwaukee campus because of the nature of the programs we have at that campus. It just depends on what they're interested in. And as it turns out, and I could talk a little bit about what they were interested in, is the majority, most of them were interested in the occupational areas. I thought for sure they might be interested in the transfer function. Only 18% of the students that we attracted were interested in just transferring on to a four-year institution. The number one area in our technical and industrial, which got most of the students in terms of the highest, was in our criminal justice police science program, which was interesting to me. I thought that was fascinating. In the business area, the number one interest was in business management and culinary arts. Not so much as a surprise, but a little bit of a surprise. And in the healthcare, not a surprise, it was in nursing. So it just depends on where those programs are offered, and we have transportation to all four campuses, so it shouldn't be a problem for students.
I'm going to ask one more question here, and then we're going to wrap things up. But I want to ask you about your personal feelings about the role you're playing in this community at this moment in your life. You've been in education a long time. What is most rewarding about this for you right now?
Well, I think the most rewarding piece of it is to have an idea, a vision about what you want for your institution and for your community. I was born and raised here. I've been at MATC for 28 years. I love what our institution does for this community and how it changes and transforms student lives. And for me, it is probably the most fulfilling job that I've had, because I get to really make a difference. Not that I didn't in my other jobs, I think that I did, but I think the scale of the kind of change that we can make, it's for the students and the people of this community, is just really fulfilling for me, especially at this point in my career.
And I'll allow you to end with a prediction. I know the crystal ball is, especially in an election year, this is not a good year to be making predictions.
Do I have to predict who's going to win?
But I'll ask you to make a prediction about the future of this program. Do you think it will be the success that I'm sure you dream it will be?
Yes, and as people have said, if it takes my last breath to make sure that this is successful, I have put and will put in every ounce of energy that I have, and we have great partners in the city who believe in this vision as well, and they have come up and stepped up, and they've really helped to make this vision a reality, and I won't stop until I make sure that it is.
Yeah, and what have you heard from your faculty, the people who will be doing the teaching?
Yeah, they are really excited. Of course, they realize maybe the pedagogy will change a little bit, that they'll have a much younger student population, that maybe some teaching techniques will have to change a little bit, but they're really looking forward to it. They want to make sure that we have support not only inside the classroom, but outside the classroom as well, so that the students can be successful.
And the students, you mentioned that. What have you heard from the families who hope to be part of this MATC Promise? What have they told you?
I think that they are full of hope, that maybe things will change in the city, that things will be different for them, that they will have a different outcome than other people that they've seen in their families and in their community, and that in fact that they will be successful, and that hope has been reborn.
We appreciate your time today. It's been a fascinating hour discussion with you. Dr. Vicki Martin is the president of Milwaukee Area Technical College. Before we go, I'd like to do what I always do, and that's thank the people in this room who are good enough to join us and interested enough in these topics. We're delighted you could be here. We thank you for your time, your interest, and your attention. And even though they'll have to cut this out of this program, I just did want to mention a couple of events that we have coming up in the next few days here at the law school, because I'm a shameless self-promoter. But tomorrow we will release our latest Marquette University Law School poll. Professor Charles Franklin, who's the director of the poll, will be here to do that for us. And then coming up on March 1st, some of the same issues we've been talking about today. We're really excited about this, and our friends at Milwaukee Public Television will be here to capture that event too. It's with Professor Matt Desmond. Professor Desmond is a sociologist from Harvard, got his doctorate over at UW-Madison, and he will be releasing a book on March 1st that is getting a lot of buzz. It's called Evicted, and it's a story that is set in Milwaukee. He spent about 18 months in our city, living in a trailer park on the south side and then in a rooming house on the north side. And he became very close with the people, and he tells this really powerful, heartbreaking story of eviction and its relationship to poverty. And I think this is going to be a very successful book. It's very well written, and so we will be doing that next week. It'll be available to be seen on Milwaukee Public Television. You can also view it on our website. We're already packed with folks, so we don't have any more seats, but we hope you'll check it out. Having said that, again, thank you all for being with us today on The Issues. Have a great day.